Good afternoon, dear friends. You are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and this is the daily report on the military situation from the Ukrainian front. Today we are receiving an enormous number of updates practically along the entire line of contact. The main changes are taking place in the Huliai-Pol and Dnipropetrovsk directions. There are also developments near Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka, minor changes on the Siversk axis, as well as updates from the Kupiansk and Sumy directions. News is also coming from Vovchansk and the Krasny Lyman area. We will talk about and examine all of that in this video. But first, by tradition, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription greatly helps the channel's growth. And if you're watching these videos but haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Thank you very much to everyone who already has. Yesterday, throughout the entire day, there were numerous calls for restraint directed at the United States from various officials regarding the potential delivery of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov spoke first, followed by Zakharova and then Peskov, all repeating the same message. The United States must show restraint. We urge them not to do this. However, all these appeals mean nothing if you're not ready to act, if you're not prepared for decisive countermeasures. What risk does the United States actually take by transferring Tomahawks to Ukraine? Damaged relations between Russia and the United States? Are they not already ruined? They seem quite ruined already. Therefore, as long as these calls remain empty words, they will have no real impact. Only concrete action can influence the situation. Yet, as we can see, none has been taken, and it seems none will be. Meanwhile, the fighting on the front continues, and we move on to the latest updates from the battlefield. And so, friends, today we have some very good news from the front. Excellent, in fact, for the Russian side. For the second day in a row, the Russian army demonstrates impressive figures of territorial gains. The day before yesterday, for those who missed my previous report, nearly 40 square kilometers came under Russian control. To be exact, it was 39 square kilometers and a bit more. Over the past 24 hours, Russian troops advanced by several dozen more than 30 square kilometers to be precise. Let's begin today's report with the area of responsibility of the Vostok East Group. 2 days ago, I told you that the village of Novokhrihorivka had come under Russian control, and that objective control footage would soon confirm this advance. I had already received information from guys on the ground that part of the Ukrainian forces in the village had been destroyed, part had fled, and that the final clearing of houses was underway. Yesterday, official footage indeed appeared, showing Russian flags in the village. Novokhrihorivka is now fully under Russian control. Moreover, the footage includes a dramatic scene from the assault. 1 Russian assault trooper against 5 Ukrainian soldiers. Once again, 1 Russian against 5. And what do you think happened? The Russian fighter killed 2 of them on the spot, wounded the remaining 3, and then those wounded were finished off by Russian drone operators. The footage is impressive. I recommend everyone watch it. I've just posted it in my Telegram channel. Follow the link in the description to see these remarkable battle scenes. Now let's look at the figures for this area. Not only did the village itself come under Russian control, but Russian forces also cleared significant areas, both to the south and north. To the south, the fighting has already reached the farm complexes. Intense clashes are taking place there now. To the north, the pocket between Kalinivsky and Novokhrihorivka has been straightened out. A large section, 11 square kilometers in the Dnipropetrovsk region, is now under Russian control. In total, the area secured by the Far Eastern troops covers just over 17 square kilometers. A very impressive result indeed. As for the Dnipropetrovsk region, there have been reports that 2 Russian assault groups broke through and entered the village of Alexeyevka. However, there's still no confirmed information about whether the Russian units managed to secure their positions there. If they did, it would mean a breakthrough of about 5 kilometers. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We are waiting for more reliable data. At the same time, Ukrainian sources are already reporting that Russian drone operators, connected via fiber optic systems, have begun targeting logistics, destroying Ukrainian vehicles along the Pokrovsk-Huliai-Pol highway. And this is while Russian forces are still in Verbov. Imagine what will happen once they reach Vyshnev. Not only fiber optic drones, but even regular drones will be able to strike that very road. Then the logistics of Huliaipol won't be completely destroyed, but they will be in serious trouble. In any case, the Far Eastern units are advancing very well and rapidly, but it should also be understood that they are sustaining losses, both killed and wounded. Now, let's move from one part of the Dnipropetrovsk region to another, but this time to the area under the responsibility of the Center Group. The Russian army has made significant progress here as well, on what could be called the western flank of Pokrovsk. This success consists of two key elements. First, Russian forces advanced about 3 kilometers from the settlement of Udakne along the railway line, reaching the outskirts of the village of Molodetskoye. In fact, this village has 2 streets on both sides of the railway tracks, one to the north, one to the south. The southern part of Molodetskoye is already under Russian control, and troops have halted for now along the border of the Dnipropetrovsk region. And really, it's only about 1 kilometer away from there to the village of Novopodhorodne, which lies inside the Dnipropetrovsk region. The advance in that direction will begin only after the northern part of Molodetskoye is fully cleared. The main vector of movement, without a doubt, remains toward the town of Mazhova, exactly as we predicted when analyzing the prospects of the autumn campaign. I told you that the offensive on Mazhova would begin, and as we see now, it has already started. Along the route toward Mazhova, there are 3 villages. From the current positions, the distance to Mazhova is 13.5 kilometers. The settlements along the way are Novopodhorodne, then Rypole, and finally Kolona Mazhova, and beyond that lies Mazhova itself. Evacuation of civilians from the area has already begun, as the locals understand that the battle for these settlements is approaching. The territory that recently came under Russian control in this sector covers slightly more than 11 square kilometers. But that's not all. There has been another extremely important, and in my opinion, even more significant success. This occurred just north of the settlement of Udakne. As you can see on the map, Russian troops not only improved their positions north of the settlement, but also managed to break through Ukrainian defenses and enter the territory of the Pokrovsk coal mine. And this is not speculation. There are objective control videos confirming it, and even the Ukrainian side has acknowledged that Russian forces entered and secured positions at the mine. What does this mean? The Pokrovsk mine is the largest coal mine in all of Ukraine. It was still operational just a year ago. It was shut down only in January, when Russian forces began a full-scale offensive and approached Pokrovsk. Now the mine has been turned into a powerful defensive stronghold of the Ukrainian army. Everything there is reinforced with concrete, and it has multi-layered underground structures used as fortified positions. It will, of course, not be an easy fight. Nevertheless, the fact that Russian troops reached the mine, entered it, and established a foothold is very telling. It is a major success. We will be closely watching how events develop further. The total area of advance across these 2 sectors amounts to 14.8 square kilometers. Moving on, over the past 24 hours, there have been no new confirmed reports from the Pokrovsk and Dobropilya salients. Some rumors appeared suggesting that Ukrainian forces were partially withdrawing from Pokrovsk. In truth, they really should be doing that if they don't want to end up surrounded. However, I have not found any solid confirmation of these claims. There is no real withdrawal. Fierce battles continue in the city's high-rise districts, Lazurny, Shakhterskaya, Yuzhny, and Solnechny. These are key locations. If Russian forces take control of these high-rise blocks, they will be able to clear the entire eastern part of the private residential area relatively quickly, up to the railway tracks. But that point is still some distance away. For now, heavy urban fighting continues in those districts. By the way, moving away from Pokrovsk to another area, an interesting change. The Ukrainian General Staff yesterday renamed the Siversk direction to the Sloviansk direction. Why, you might ask? Because the fall of Siversk is now only a matter of time. The city is already surrounded from 3 sides, north, east, and south. On the southern flank, Russian forces recently captured Kuzminivka and have begun advancing from Vyimka toward the city. The key battles here will be for the village of Zvanivka. If it falls, Russian troops will be able to control one of the last 2 remaining logistical arteries of Siversk with direct fire. In general, the fall of Siversk is now only a matter of months, likely within half a year. After that, the offensive will continue towards Sloviansk. This is why the Ukrainian command is, in essence, writing off Siversk and renaming the operational direction from Siversk to Sloviansk. Meanwhile, extremely heavy fighting continues for Yampol. The situation there is very tough. Combat is happening literally house by house. Over the past 24 hours, Russian forces managed to advance 150 meters through the residential area, clearing several households. Ukrainian troops are resisting fiercely and have even launched several counterattacks to push Russian units out of the settlement. But none were successful. Not only did they fail to dislodge Russian forces, but they also had to retreat slightly. Still, the fighting there is very hard. Yampol is a critically important location, and the Ukrainian army will fight for every last building on its outskirts. This means that the battles could drag on for another month or even two. Overall, summarizing the last 24 hours, Russian forces took control of 32 square kilometers of territory, and the day before that, 39 square kilometers. Thus, in just 2 days, over 70 square kilometers have come under Russian control, an impressive advance, especially considering that the greenery is gone and it is already October. Now to the Lyman direction. Reports indicate that Russian forces are developing their offensive from Derelov toward Drobyshev, advancing as well toward Novoselivka and west of Shandriholov. South of Kolodazy, Kiev's troops attempted counterattacks, but Russian FPV drone operators effectively struck Ukrainian groups, disrupting their assaults. At the same time, Russian assault operations continue in the direction of the village of Stavki. North of Zarekne, fighting is ongoing. Russian units are expanding their control zone and clearing forest belts. The area around Mern remains under Ukrainian control. Russian aerospace forces conducted an airstrike on Ukrainian rear logistics hubs, destroying a bridge across the Siversky Donets River near Rygorodok. Another span of the crossing was demolished. Kupiansk sector. Russian troops broke through into the central part of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Large Ukrainian formations have come under the threat of encirclement. On the right flank, Russian units advanced at the junction of Kharkivska and Kuznechna streets, moving 1.5 kilometers toward the Kupiansk City College. If Kiev's forces continue to retreat and lose the high-rise buildings along Karl Marx Street on the western outskirts of Kupiansk, they will have no chance to stop the Russian advance. On the left flank, Russian troops pushed into the city center, dislodging Ukrainian forces from the market area and reaching the Kupianka River, taking control of high-rise buildings along Pervomaiska Street. Ukrainian units still holding the Dacha area west of the Brewery Stadium have now found themselves under threat of encirclement due to Russian breakthroughs on both flanks, and most likely they will be forced to withdraw. Now let's take a look at the political front. Kiev is intensifying the use of artillery and drones, while the Russian aerospace forces launched strikes on military targets in 5 Ukrainian regions. A massive strike hit the Kharkiv thermal power plant. In Poltava, the locomotive depot and traction substation were targeted. Powerful strikes also hit the energy infrastructure in Sumy. In Sloviansk, Russian drones destroyed Ukrainian air defense positions located in a school and on the grounds of an energy college. One of the strikes hit a mortar ammunition depot. The deployment of American Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine will operate under full U.S. control, similar to the HIMARS system. This is part of the U.S. Prompt Global Strike Strategy. Washington will retain full launch authority for at least 2 reasons. First, the dual-key system. Launch will only be possible after U.S. authorization. Second, dependency on U.S. and Allied reconnaissance data. To target sites deep inside Russia, Ukraine would require an intelligence package from U.S. satellites and communication systems. Without that, such strikes are impossible. Technically, Ukrainian crews can service the launchers, but the actual missile use will depend entirely on U.S. approval and support. In essence, this means that the conflict from the Ukrainian side continues to be directed from Washington, while Ukraine itself functions merely as a forward platform, a testing ground for American military strategies carried out without formal Pentagon involvement. Finally, former Ukrainian MP and serviceman Ihor Lutsenko accused the Ukrainian military command of systematic deception at all levels, lying about lost positions, losses, the condition of armaments, and the effectiveness of air defenses. He also said that some generals are forced to cross-check reports with other units because they do not trust their own headquarters' reports. These admissions point to a deep command crisis within the Ukrainian armed forces, where feedback channels are broken. An army built on lies loses touch with reality, and Kyiv's general staff receives a distorted picture of the war, which calls all its statements into question. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico criticized the Repower EU plan presented by the European Commission in 2022 at the European Nuclear Forum in Bratislava. That plan aims to phase out Russian fuel by 2030, TASS quotes his words. Regarding the abandonment of traditional gas and oil supplies, he said, "We are shooting ourselves in the foot. I am ready to argue with the European Commission for days. Constructively, positively convince the Commission that this is an absurd ideological step. I ask the EC, take off your anti-Russian glasses. If you remove them, we will make more rational and normal decisions." Robert Fico called the Repower EU plan utter nonsense. European politicians are worried about the victory of the opposition movement led by Andrej Babiš in the Czech parliamentary elections. They fear his leader could become a destructive figure in the EU alongside Hungary's Orbán and Slovakia's Fico.